let's talk a little bit about Rocky Adkins. Now, Matt Bevin already beat a Rocky Adkins, Will Scott. So you have, this old country boy with a southern twang. It looks like Kentucky, sounds like Kentucky. Matt beat him. Matt Bevin already beat a Rocky Adkins called Will Scott in the Republican primary in 2015. Now, Rocky Adkins is not an inspiring person. He gets up there and he shouts and he yells. So he has some charisma, but he doesn't have charisma for a radical agenda. He doesn't have charisma for a radical agenda. The only thing that's going to beat a charismatic right-wing radical is a charismatic left-wing radical. The only thing that's going to beat a Matt Bevin is a Bernie Sanders, unless it's a libertarian. So the only people that can beat Matt Bevin from the right would be the libertarians. But the Democrats, they're not libertarians. They have some libertarian ideas, casinos, a little bit of medical marijuana. But for the Democrats, you need a charismatic and a radical. Those are the only, you need to have an Adam Edelin and a Jeffrey Young fused together. That's the only thing that's going to beat. Rocky Adkins is a conservative Democrat. That's another thing. So he's not only not a radical, not only is he not a radical, he's barely even liberal, barely even leftist. So you have this centrist Democrat that's like, rah, rah, rah. But he's pro-life. Rocky Adkins is pro-life. He wavered on whether or not he would ban abortion. He said that he would just go along with whatever the Supreme Court said and enforce the Constitution. But he's pro-life. He's pro-life. He voted for the 2004 anti-gay marriage ballot initiative, and he works in the oil and gas industry. He's involved with Appalachian Fuels. So he works in the gasoline industry. Yeah, I'm sure he's going to be all about cleaning up the pollution. So Rocky Adkins is a conservative Democrat, and even some of the bywords, he uses a lot of the words that Democrats use, but it's all bullshit. It's nothing but a bunch of bullshit. So a little bit about Rocky Adkins. He's born in Moorhead, Kentucky. That's the same birthplace as Charles Manson. He's currently the House Minority Leader. So he's currently the leader of the Democrats in Kentucky. He's been the leader of the Democrats in Kentucky for 17 years, whether as House Minority or House Majority Leader. He's been a representative since 1987, since I was 5. I've been 5 years of age. Rocky Adkins has had power since I've been 5 years of age. And there hasn't been much change when it comes to Kentucky. It's the same poor, backwards, ignorant, lots of poverty. 1 out of 5 people, 1 out of 5 kids are poor. And you have just, go across the board, cancer, health disease, heart disease, diabetes, obesity. There are a lot of car accidents, a lot of binge drinking, lots of smoking. A lot of health problems, a lot of problems all across the board. So what the hell has Rocky Adkins done in the 30-something years he's been in power? His term is going to end in 2021. He just got reelected with 66% of approval. So he's got popularity in his district, but he's not going to beat Matt Bevin. He will not beat Matt Bevin. He says he's going to protect the state pensions for teachers, public employees, first responders, and the millionaire judges. Make sure the millionaire judges get to keep their pensions. Meanwhile, you got, $10,000 is the average income for the people of Clay County. So you have all those poor kids, right? Why don't you give them some pensions? I guarantee you that would help pull them up out of poverty. Rocky Adkins, he says all these things. He's going to protect state pensions, teachers, public employees. In general, I believe in universal education, and if it's administered right, but a lot of times you could get a big old fat bureaucracy. That's how the Ming Dynasty or the Qing Dynasty, some dynasty in China, they just kept on getting a big fat military class, and they all just got used to just, living on the dole. So this isn't just welfare, but this is welfare for politicians. So these politicians, he's a career politician. He's a perennial candidate. He runs every 2 years. He's ran 15 years. Can you get any more perennial than 15 times? In 30 years, he's ran for 15 times. So Jeff Young has ran 4 times, and they say perennial just to shut him up. But Rocky Adkins has run for election 15 times. How is that not perennial? That's so fucking perennial, it's not even funny. It's career politician, perennial. So like Robert Goforth, Rocky Adkins is anti-charter schools. He's not for school choice because it drains the pool of cash for public education. He's for totalitarian schools. He's for the public education to be a monopoly, to have no other choices whatsoever. I agree with the idea of universal education if we were teaching civics, if we were teaching democracy, if they had freedom, but they're just teaching obedience to authority. You're going to have a 13% to 20% turnout rate. I bet you less than 20% of the Democrats go out to vote. Even though this is exciting, you got 4 candidates. It's an open, Democratic seat so for, the candidacy for the nomination. So even in the most exciting times of Democrat politics, you're not even going to get 20% of the Democrats to go out to vote. So 80% of Democrats aren't even voting compared to, 80% of the whole state. So he's not ready for the 21st century. All you have to do is get internet for everybody, and everybody can educate themselves. But he's sitting there protecting all these, old institutions which need to change. Liberals generally want change, but Rocky Adkins is a conservative. He's saying, let's keep all this the same. One interesting thing is that he's in favor of casinos. He said he'd want to put an amendment on the ballot, but he would vote in favor of it. He says we're losing money out of the state, so therefore Adkins thinks that casinos could be the answer. Casinos is going to be the answer. William E. Woods and Andy Beshear both for casinos. So William E. Woods, the Republican, Andy Beshear, Democrat, they both want casinos too. Rocky Adkins wants casinos. And is that going to, bring Kentucky up out of poverty? If anything, the casinos are going to screw over, all the poor people. The House always wins, so casinos should be legal, but I'm not all rah, rah, rah. Let's bring casinos into Kentucky. So that seems to be the only progressive thing that he actually stands for. Now, he talks about health care. He says he's the only candidate who is at the forefront of expanding access to health care. So pay attention to these politicians' words. They speak out both ends of their mouth, and they give little, dog whistles. Medicaid, he said, isn't only a health care policy, it's also an economic development. He says economic like an asshole, like a stuck-up prick. Economic, right? More like stinkonomics, reconomics, that kind of economics, whatever Rocky Adkins thinks his economics has not been helping Kentucky. He's got Appalachian Fuels, so he's going to make a shit ton of money. He's going to make money, going to the legislature. He gets paid as a politician, gets paid as a business owner. Is he making sure that everybody has an opportunity to be a politician and a business owner, or is he just taking and monopolizing? We need to attract new businesses and industries that provide. So Rocky Adkins talks about a living wage, but he's talking about bringing new businesses and industries that provide a living wage. That is what Matt Bevin has been doing, these international fishing expedition, $30 million for absolutely nothing. And then he also says something about raising the minimum wage in a tiered process with exceptions for small business. Well, how are you going to do that? Okay, we got minimum wage $10 an hour, but for small businesses, they can pay $3 an hour. You're going to have one minimum wage for one industry, another minimum wage for, that's not really minimum wage. Now, is it? It just all sounds like a bunch of bullshit. When he talks about a living wage means that you can afford everything. You are working 40 hours a week, and you can, have a living wage. You can have a wage that pays for your housing, health care, car note. You can pay for all those things. So a living wage is higher than a minimum wage because a living wage make sure that you can, get everything. Poverty is $24,000 for a family of 4. So when he talks about providing a living wage, he's not just saying we need to raise the minimum wage or get unions to, raise our wages. What he's talking about is we need to get more Toyotas. We need to get more, McDonald's and Walmarts. We need to get more corporations into Kentucky in order to provide a living wage. He's not talking about a living wage by itself. Rocky Adkins is just hoping. He's just hoping that there's going to be a living wage. He talks about the aerospace industry. So apparently the aerospace industry is doing very well in Kentucky. So, go ahead and finance it or whatever with the aerospace industry, champion it. I'm not against that. I actually like that a lot. Okay, so that's at least one good thing, right? Casinos, he's progressive on. Aerospace industry, he's, progressive on. But he's not progressive when it comes to minimum wage, living wage, universal health care. He says all the right words, right? He's saying education. He's saying living wage. He's saying health care. He's even talking about getting some internet. But he doesn't believe in any of them. He's not going to get the government to get internet for all of Kentucky. He's going to try to do this or that program, try to, get some internet company in there. And if a corporation will come in and then just save him, then he'll, take credit for it. But he's not going to spearhead any of these things. He's been in power for 30 years. If he truly cared about universal health care or a living wage or internet or any of the, things that he talks about, casinos, they try to do casinos under Steve Beshear's administration. This is deja vu all over again. 2008, Steve Beshear ran on casinos and won. But guess what? We never got casinos. We didn't even get a vote on casinos. his economics, his Reconomics, his stinkonomics. He says economics. Oh, the economic policy. It's fucking economics, motherfucker. I thought you were all about Kentucky. You're all about working class. No working class Kentuckian says economics. Economics, like a nerd, like a goddamn professor, a stuck-up professor asshole, right? Reconomics, stinkonomics, that's what Rocky Adkins is all about. One thing I do like is that he's for free community and vocational schools. He's not for free colleges. Adam Edelin agrees. You got to walk before you run, they keep saying, so they keep on doing these little tiny radical things. Free community and vocational schools would help Kentucky a bunch. So that's a great idea. Free community and vocational schools, they say technical schools, and support the aerospace industry and for casinos. But when it comes to health care, he's about access to health care. He rushes out to point the economics of it. So he's not saying we need health care to, make sure sick Kentuckians aren't sick no more so that you have a nice, educated, and healthy population. He's saying let's get some Medicaid in here because it'll help get the doctors and the hospitals some money on a living wage. He's more about just bringing in those Toyotas, and hopefully they'll bring in a living wage. And then when he talks about raising the minimum wage, he's going to do a tier process, not for small businesses. He's not talking about no goddamn minimum wage. He does talk about extended early voting, which would help if you had extended early voting, so allow people to go vote for 2 weeks earlier. Colorado has written ballots. You have a month to decide. They send you a written ballot, and you have an entire month to send it in. Democracy in Kentucky is absolutely embarrassing. They don't have referendums. They don't have initiatives. I voted on more questions in Colorado in 1 year than I have the entire time I lived in Kentucky. So for 3 decades, I voted for 2 initiatives, but in Colorado, I voted for 30. So Colorado keeps on asking the people what do they think, whereas Kentucky rarely asks the people what they think. Even if all the people in Kentucky signed an initiative, it wouldn't get on the ballot because it has to go through the legislature. So the democracy in Kentucky sucks. There is same-day registration in Colorado. They have written ballots, so you have a paper trail, and you have an entire month to look at the issues and look at the candidates and make a nice, reasonable decision. He's talking about extended early voting and automatic registration. Those are decent ideas, but it's not enough. It's not even close to being enough. Automatic registration, when you go get your driver's license, they ask you if you want to register to vote, so that is already kind of there anyways. So automatic registration, you can make it a fine if you don't vote, like in Australia, $1,000 fine if you don't vote. So even though I like the automatic registration thing, the casinos, yeah, it should be a free society. Infrastructure, he talks about infrastructure. Yeah, all those things are good things, the words, but what's the plan? What's the devil is in the details. When he's talking about health care, he cannot say universal health care to make sure that Kentucky is healthy. He can't say that. He says it's the economics of it. That's what he wants to do. On living wage, it's the economics, right? When it comes to marijuana, he's weak on it, too. For 30 years, he didn't do shit, didn't give a shit. He also voted for Hillary Clinton. He didn't say he held his nose when he voted for Hillary Clinton. He just voted for Hillary. He also couldn't mention any of the Democrat candidates that are out there now that he likes. He says that the pension system was fixed in 2013. Well, that's a big shocker to everybody right there. So he voted for Hillary. You have West Virginia and Indiana that voted for Bernie Sanders. Only a Bernie Sanders kind of candidate will beat Matt Bevin. He's a radical and he's charismatic. So you need a radical leftist who's charismatic. And that's just not Rocky Adkins. He's voting for Hillary. West Virginia and Indiana are Bernie Sanders states, so there's some hope in West Virginia and Indiana. But the Republicans are batshit crazy in Kentucky, but the Democrats are the Republicans. Democrats are the Republicans in Kentucky now, and the Republicans are batshit crazy. So on marijuana, he absolutely opposes recreational marijuana. These slow as devil's in the details, so a lot of this stuff I'm like, what's the plan? What do you're saying all these, decent things, but what's your plan? Is there a plan? And then he just has so many contradictions in just one sentence. It doesn't sound like he's got a plan at all. So on marijuana, what's he going to do? You already have medical marijuana is already legal. CBD is legal. So when he says he wants medical marijuana, is it going to be, for anxiety? Is it going to be for depression, insomnia? Is it going to be for, little things so the doctors can offer prescriptions? Or is it going to be like CBD where only one person can go to UK and that's the only person that can get CBD? He opposes recreational marijuana. Well, of course, he's been against Gatewood his entire life. So when it comes to marijuana and he says medical marijuana, that's a very weak stance because medical marijuana is already legal in Kentucky. So they're not changing anything. And then he pushes hemp. We need to really focus on hemp. Hemp is already legal too. So what the fuck are you talking about, Rocky Adkins? You already got legal hemp. You already got legal medical marijuana, a little bit of it. So you're just going to keep the things the same? Are you going to expand it? You're going to make it better? What is your medical marijuana plan? I bet you don't have one. He is for restoring ex-felons' right to vote, which if you've done your time, then you deserve your right to vote to come back on prisons. Rocky Adkins is for early release. He's very weak when it comes to health care. He's very weak when it comes to a living wage. He's very weak when it comes to marijuana. He's very weak when it comes to defending gay folks. He voted against gay marriage in 2004. He's the one that put the amendment on the ballot, and then he voted against it. Now he's changed his mind. When they asked him if he would defend gay folks against discrimination, he gave a weak little yes. Adam Edelin said, hell yes, I will defend gay folks against discrimination. Discrimination is bullshit, but they're discriminating against Jeff Young, so they're a bunch of discriminating assholes. You know, they're probably secret racists and homophobics. He was homophobic in 2004, right? He's pro-life, so he may ban abortion. He talks out of both ends of his mouth saying that he's for both choice and life. He would protect Roe v. Wade. He just says he's going to uphold the Constitution. So if the Supreme Court changes their mind, then he's going to go ahead and go along with the Supreme Court. So if the Supreme Court allows abortion, watch out. Rocky Adkins is going to go ahead and ban abortion. So he opposes legislative cuts to education and pensions. You know, all cuts. Just anybody that's got, you know, a job in education and any judge who gets $1 million pensions, we're just going to keep on giving them more money, securing investments in energy research and tourism. Energy research. Give me a fucking break, man. Give me a vision. There's a lack of vision, too. He says that Kentucky needs to invest in water, internet, transportation infrastructure. Sure they do. You already have a road department, so the transportation infrastructure is there. Internet, water. Letcher County don't have, 70% of Letcher County don't even have running water. So is he talking about getting Letcher County some running water? When it comes to the internet, again, it's not about, you know, the government getting involved in getting internet for everybody. It's about trying to entice some internet company to go ahead and do the work for him. And then he brags about getting work across the aisle to get things done. George Carlin says when they are being bipartisan, then that means you got an extra fucking coming up. So bipartisanship by itself, I don't want you to get along with a bunch of fucking Nazi pricks. I don't want you to get along with a bunch of assholes, but automatically Rocky Adkins, because he's a conservative, right-wing Republican Democrat, of course he's going to work with the Republicans. He probably relates to the Republicans more than he does to the Democrats. So, yeah, he's good on infrastructure, right? He says the right words. Casinos, he's right about casinos, but he barely, you know, even gives a shit. Automatic registration is a good idea, but that's not even close to getting a democracy that functions. What about instant runoff voting? Is that he's not in the race to beat Bevin. Matt Bevin is a symbol, so yes, you should be in the race to beat Bevin. Matt Jones is giving Matt Bevin the fucking race. Matt Jones is fucking the Democrats over. That's why he doesn't want the progressive Jeff Young in there. Says, oh, he's ran 1,000 times. He hasn't run 1,000 times. He's ran 4 times, 2 times for state rep and 2 times for governor. This would be the second time he's ran for governor. How many people? Joe Biden has ran for 4 times. Does Matt Jones say shit about him being a perennial candidate? You know, Joe Biden's run 3 or 4 times for president, lost all 3 times. Oh, yeah, that's a great candidate right there. So he says he's bringing in experience. He's not there to beat Bevin. He's going to bring in his experience. Well, Bevin's got 3 years of experience, right? He's been passing laws. He's been doing, you know, all the work that a governor does, balancing budgets, signing bills. So the experience, what experience are you going to bring that for the last 30 years you haven't done a goddamn thing? For the last 30 years you've ignored poverty and obesity and cancer. You've ignored, you know, whether or not you should legalize freedom. You're talking about medical marijuana. You should have had recreation. You should have had Gatewood. You should have listened to Gatewood, Kentucky. But instead of listening to Gatewood, now you got these neoliberal assholes. Rocky Adkins will lose the race in November against Matt Bevin, hands down. I'll bet anybody. To be fair, right, he does want to restore ex-felons' right to vote. If you've done your time, you deserve to be brought back into society. So he's for automatic registration. He's for casinos. A lot of the words, you know, like what he's saying when it comes to, you know, health care and living wage and shit like that, but those are just very weak. So there's only very few things, you know, aerospace industry, then free community and vocational schools. I guess that would be the biggest plank of Rocky Adkins is the free community and vocational schools and supporting the aerospace industry. So he's a shitty candidate. He's an awful candidate with what, 2 progressive, 3 progressive ideas? Okay, he's been a rep for 30 years, a powerful Democrat in Frankfort, but he hasn't done shit. So all the problems that are actually happening in Kentucky can be blamed on Rocky. He is not the solution. He's been the problem. So Rocky Adkins can play a guitar. He plays bluegrass music, so he's entertaining. I'll give Rocky Adkins that credit. He's entertaining. He gets up and he can, yell on the microphone. So, but what are you yelling about? You're yelling to be a centrist. You're yelling to hurry up and be a Republican. You think you're going to out-Republican the Republican? You think you're going to out-Republican a radical, charismatic Republican? It'll never work. It never has, and it never